You know, that quote from psychotherapist Philippa Perry, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? I mean, it's one thing to love our kids unconditionally, but it's a whole other thing to actually like being with them, day in and day out.
So let's dive into that. Today, we're unpacking the incredible ideas from Philippa Perry's The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read. It's all about how our own childhood secretly shapes the way we parent, and, more importantly, how we can build the relationships we really want with our kids.
First up, we've got to talk about the past and the present. The book makes it super clear that if we want to understand our own parenting, we have to start by understanding the legacy of how we were parented.
And this really frames the whole thing perfectly. It's not about having the right script or memorizing the right rules. It's about realizing that our own emotional history is always there, kind of like an invisible guest in the room. Our kids are watching, and they're learning from what we do, not just from the lectures we give.
To really see how this plays out, let's look at a story from the book. And get this, the parent, Tay, is a psychotherapist herself, which just goes to show you this stuff can sneak up on anyone. So she's at the park, and her 7-year-old daughter, Emily, gets stuck on a climbing frame.
And right there, that's the rupture. Tay's reaction is huge. It's completely out of proportion to what's happening. Emily is just a little kid who's scared and needs help, but Tay feels this sudden, white-hot fury. So what's going on? Because it's definitely not about the climbing frame.
And here is the absolute key. Tay realized she'd been hit by what Perry calls an emotional time warp. Emily's moment of helplessness didn't just trigger concern, it triggered Tay's own buried, ancient feelings of being made to feel small and incapable when she was a child. In that moment, she wasn't responding to her daughter at all. She was reacting to a ghost from her own past.
And this is the gut punch. This is the result. Because from a child's point of view, these totally baffling adult explosions have a very simple and very heartbreaking translation. For Emily, her mom's anger wasn't some complex psychological event. It was just a sign that her mom didn't care.
So if these kinds of blow-ups and misunderstandings are pretty much inevitable, what are we supposed to do? Well, this brings us to the most powerful and honestly the most hopeful idea in the whole book, the art of repair.
The big takeaway here, and this should feel like a huge relief, is that you don't have to be a perfect parent. In fact, you can't be. Nobody can. You're going to make mistakes. The thing that actually builds a strong relationship isn't avoiding those breaks, those ruptures. It's what you do after they happen. The mending is what matters most.
But let's be honest, repair can be tough, especially when we get stuck in what Perry calls fact tennis. You know this game, right? It's where each person just lobs facts and arguments back and forth, trying to score points and win. That is the exact opposite of repair. Repair isn't about winning, it's about understanding. Let's look at another classic example. You've got 22-year-old Johnny who asks his dad, Keith, if he can have his old leather jacket. A simple enough request, right? But Keith, who was already feeling a little sensitive about getting older, just snaps. He hears an attack that was never, ever intended.
As the mediator in the story points out, Johnny wasn't attacking his dad. He just thought, hey, cool jacket. The problem wasn't the jacket, the problem was Keith's unacknowledged feeling of being old and maybe pushed aside. The repair only happens when they stop playing fact tennis about the jacket and actually acknowledge the real feelings bubbling underneath.
And that all leads us perfectly into our next section, A Parent's Guide to Feelings. Because the goal ultimately is to learn how to feel with our kids, not just deal with them.
All right, let's try a quick pop quiz. Picture this. Your kid says something that you know is factually, demonstrably untrue. Like, we never go out. What is your first gut instinct?
For most of us, our instinct is to fire back with a fact. What are you talking about? We literally just went to Legoland last week. We correct them, but that just denies their feeling. The book suggests a totally different approach, validation. You acknowledge the feeling behind the words. Something like, wow, it sounds like you're feeling really bored and you wish we could do something fun. You're not agreeing with the fact, you're validating the emotion.
And this quote explains exactly why that works. As human beings, this is what we crave. We don't want to just be managed or handled. We want to be felt with. When we validate our child's feeling, we're sending a powerful message. You are not alone in this feeling. I get it.
Now, this idea extends even to setting boundaries. Instead of those classic authoritarian standoffs, Perry lays out a 4-step collaborative method. First, you define the problem clearly from your side. Second, you try to find the feeling behind your child's behavior. Third, you validate that feeling, and then fourth, you brainstorm solutions together. It completely transforms a power struggle into a problem-solving team.
Okay, so what's the long game here?
what's the real payoff for all this emotional heavy lifting? Well, it's not just about getting through the day with fewer tantrums. It's about laying the foundation for a truly strong, lifelong connection.
And this links up perfectly with the amazing research of psychologist John Gottman. He found that the health of a relationship isn't decided by the big, grand gestures. It's decided by how we handle these tiny, everyday moments that he calls bids for connection.
A bid can be almost anything. It's your kid shouting, "Hey, watch this!" It's your partner pointing out a bird outside the window. They're just small, simple requests for attention and connection. And Gottman found that couples who consistently turn towards these bids, who acknowledge them, build up this huge reserve of goodwill and trust. The exact same is true for our kids. Every little bid we turn towards is like making a deposit in their emotional bank account.
Now, what if you're listening to all of this and just thinking about all the mistakes you've made? The book's most compassionate and reassuring message is this one right here. It doesn't matter if your child is 3 or 33. It is never, ever too late to try and repair a rupture. An apology, a real explanation, a true willingness to listen, that can mend things years after they were broken.
Because in the end, our parenting legacy isn't something that we just leave behind when we're gone. We are building it right now, today, in all these small, everyday moments and interactions. The choice, as this book shows us so clearly, is how we want to build it. So, what will yours be?